Is this okay? Does this look weird? I tried to make it look as pretty as possible by just slapping a massive painting behind me. I don't know if it looks weird or not though. Hello. So we're going to keep talking about the mechanics today. So if you guys remember in the last video, we talked about the different designs of menus and inventory and everything that the other games that I play have. And we mainly modeled it off of Eastward, which was, I think, the most aesthetic of the 3 games that we looked at. So yeah, we just did a general design and then some very brief coding. And now we're just going to delve deeper into it. And as we're speaking, I guess you could call him my game dev maestro, is giving me a bunch of feedback on what the menu should have looked like. Let's read that at the end of the video. What did I do this week? Firstly, I decided to polish off that submenu a little bit more. I went back into the design and realized that it's a bit janky and there are some things that you might want to access a bit easier. For example, the checkpoints and the options. And in the original design, or I guess the previous design that we talked about, in order to like turn the sound down or up, you would have to press the escape button to access the submenu, and then you'd have to press the back button to access the, I guess, official menu, and then you'd have to click on the options tab to get to the sound. And I thought that was not so great, so I added some little shortcuts for those 2 windows, and I think it looks prettier this way too, and a bit more explanatory. On top of that, I decided to also add some cute visuals. Again, a little bit of inspiration I took from Eastward. It's obviously not as cute and designed as Eastward is, but I wanted to make like a cute little pop effect whenever you clicked on those buttons, just because it's cute. And here's the code for that. Very, very simple. That was basically all I did for the submenu, to be honest. I did say in the last video that I'd like to get deeper into designing the map and the achievements and everything, but I think that's something that goes outside of the mechanics for the menu that will be discussed in the next couple of videos. Alright, so moving on to the checkpoints and options screen. Again, if you guys remember, I also decided to update the checkpoints and options because they were just way too simple. There was only one saving slot in the checkpoints, and the options only had options for turning the SFX and the music volume up and down, which obviously is not enough. Let's start off with the checkpoints. First, I went into the editor and created a cute little prototype for everything. So I added a play button, a save button, and a clear data button. Basically, what my plan was to firstly have those 3 buttons work, and then in these big boxes that you see, the white boxes, I wanted to create like a screenshot of the game every time the game would save. Literally 90% of the work that was done here was thanks to this YouTube channel called ShapedByRainStudios. They made like 3 separate, very explanatory videos on the whole data persistence manager, and the code was like a really, really big help. So let's talk about that a little bit more in detail. Obviously, their channel will explain everything a lot better because they literally designed it, but basically it works in a very smart way. You have a data persistence manager, which takes care of the loading and saving, just those mechanics. And then we have the game data, which is where all of the information from the game is stored. For example, our health bar, coordinates, our inventory. And the cool thing about that is, since it's a JSON file, you can't like literally dump the assets in there. Instead, you're supposed to just put in the very basic data. For example, the number 1 for the health bar, indicating that you are at like 1 health, for example. And that also reduces your memory in the game a lot more. So yeah, that was the game data. And then we have, of course, the file data handler, which is the thing that actually serializes and deserializes the information. Those 3 classes I didn't really touch because they're very usable for any game, I feel like. But for other things, for example, there was a save slot menu thing in a menu class that was more tailored to their game. Mine already had ways of like moving the menu out or in and making buttons interactable or not. So I modified the code a little bit, but I did keep the save slot class, which was the important class for having several different checkpoints, where the way it works is they just assign different IDs for each different slot, so then they can be saved in different folders in your computer. I only had 3 checkpoint slots, so my IDs were just 0, 1, and 2. And yeah, since all the work was basically done for me anyway, everything worked perfectly. But then the hard part came. The hard part was the question of how I even am supposed to screenshot the progress and then make it show in the boxes. This is what I did first. I went into my dummy project where I just test out different things. The first thing I did was to see if I can upload some random picture from my computer onto Unity. That worked out. That was awesome. And then the second step was to check and see if I can screenshot the Unity game while it was running and then save it onto the computer. And that worked out too. So both commands just use the very basic like reading and writing files off of a computer. So there was nothing fancy with that, to be honest. I just wanted to double check that that was possible. There's also one line of code that Unity offers you called like screen capture dot capture screen or something. Anyway, I'll show the code on this screen. So now I had to take that project and move it into the actual game. So we went ahead and did that, and immediately one big issue came up. That was, where should you save the file in the first place? And I decided to integrate that with the file data handler. So all of the game data that is taken by the file data handler is then saved within the application as gamedata.json, but of course you can change the name if you want to. So I went ahead and copied the folder locations and decided to put the images in there. The second issue that came up was the fact that when I saved the game, the picture screenshotted correctly, but that screenshot would be applied to every single box, even though you obviously saved only into one checkpoint. So obviously that was going to happen because I was using the same script for each of the 3 images. I didn't really feed in the IDs for the checkpoints, and it seemed to have worked. The only problem was that I didn't know how to tell the code that this image should be screenshotted and put into this box. Like the most recent slot that you save from should be the one that should be altered. But for some reason, it was always the middle box. I don't know why. So I haven't figured that out yet, to be honest. But I think I just need to find a smarter way of integrating those together. I'm sure it's really easy. I just haven't thought of it yet. A cool thing that the data persistence manager does is it saves the game every 60 seconds. And initially, I would, in the early access game, I would save the game whenever you would switch from one scene to another, and that's definitely not going to be a good solution when the maps get bigger and bigger, which it will in the second and third chapters. It's the most intuitive to save it over certain time intervals, but obviously you can also manually save it too. About the checkpoint screen though, there's still a lot to update. First of all, that one issue of that image always saving and showing on the middle box for some reason instead of the correct box, if that makes sense. And also, I don't want the game to screenshot whenever we're on the menu. I want it to always only ever screenshot the game itself. That was basically it for the checkpoints. Now let's move on to the options. For the options tab, I mainly only muddled around with the visuals. There's still a lot to change because it looks really janky right now, but initially it was just the sound manipulation, but now I added controls for different things. Language, I also decided to add visuals tweaking too. Maybe you want to increase or decrease the quality based on how good your GPU is. Maybe you're colorblind and you want to see it in different colors that are more suitable for you. Maybe you just hate the colors and you just want to see it in all tones of red or something. I don't know. I'm just brainstorming right now. So far, that's all I've been able to do for this week. Let me also discuss some bugs that I went through in the game that I haven't resolved yet, which will be resolved in the beginning of the next video, because I want to add a debugging section in the beginning of every video. Let's see if that's interesting or not. Right, so firstly, I need to fix up the way I handle the visibility of different buttons. For example, the options screen, when you click on it and then you move it away, the background moves away, but the options themselves don't. Another massive problem with the game is when you like swipe away from it, it crashes when you go to play it again, if that makes sense. So I need to find a way to pause the game. And then all the issues I talked about with the checkpoints, that needs to be resolved. Oh yeah, and then I added a back to game button to make things more easy to navigate through, to go from the menu to the actual game, but that shouldn't show up until you actually have a game that is currently playing. Also, when you click on the play button more than once, then the same scene will load depending on how many times you click that button, so that needs to be fixed. Yeah, and then we should configure the option screen. But that will be discussed in the next video, because now that we have a general grasp of what the mechanics should look like... Wait a minute. Before I start talking about the next video, let's see what this amazing person said. Okay, my good game dev maestro said that I should have shortcuts for both the map and the inventory, which is actually what Eastward did, if you remember, or if I even talked about it. I don't think I did, but yeah, that's what Eastward did. Yeah, and then I should also preferably change the button for the duduk from Q to the spacebar. I think that makes more sense, because it's also like long and the spacebar is long. I don't know, it like adds a nice visual tie between the two. Okay, moving on to the next video. What are we going to talk about? Now that we have a good grasp of the mechanics, I want to move on to, I think, is the biggest issue in the game, and that's that it's not clear. People don't know how to play the game. So I imagine in the next video we'll be tying the options screen with the game, and the submenu too will be tied with the game, because I remember there was an objectives tab that we haven't worked on, and that will definitely help players know where to go and what to do. So yeah, please look forward to that. I know I do. I was waiting for that point for a long time. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any feedback, comments, things you liked, things you hated, please comment it below. Thank you. Okay. Mwah.